Hi, 4th and 5th graders. It's Mrs. Hawes. We are still reading Ruby Holler. We are on chapter 34. So last week, Mr. Trepid, the bad guy who owns the Boxton Street home, he is hiring somebody to find the Understone funds. He said, just go find whatever big rock you can find and tell me where it's at. Make a map so I can go look for it. So he's paying somebody. He thinks he's going to get rich quick by stealing Siri and Tiller's money. So that's where we're at. So I think that's where we left off last week with him. Okay, so this is further forward. It's called bearings. We'll be able to tell what direction we're setting off when the sun stays visible, Siri said, and the trees will help. Moss usually grows on the north side of the trees, and I am so stupid for forgetting the compass. You're not stupid. I'm sure we'll be fine, Siri said, just fine. But she didn't sound convinced as they hacked through the bush. Let's talk about something, Dallas. Make time pass more easily. Like what? Tell me about the scary toothless lunatic you and Florida keep referring to. Was he really toothless? Was he really a lunatic? Do you guys know what a lunatic is? It just means somebody who's kind of like out of their mind. Yep, he was. So tell me about him. Don't like to talk about it, he said. Sometimes talking about it is good, Sari said. Just pretend you're talking to Florida. Oh, I don't know, said Dallas. What was his name? Why was he toothless? What did his mouth look like? Sari prodded. Well, I guess I could talk about it a little, he said. And so Dallas and Sari told Sari about the toothless Mr. Drepp and his wife and that fidgety fingers and how Mr. Drepp had locked them in the cellar and had made them spend the night there in a smelly, damp, rotted place. But that's criminal, said Sari. That's a terrible thing to do to anybody. Well, I thought I sassed him, see. He thought I sassed him, see. So he told us that we were going to have to dig a well, and I told him we couldn't do that. So I guess being in the cellar was our punishment for sassing. Digging a well? But that's criminal. I can't get my head around this, Dallas, and even if you did sass him, that's no reason to put you in a cellar. That's kind of what we thought, Dallas said, but we weren't exactly sure. Not sure? You mean you don't think? That is strange. You didn't think that was terrible? Dallas shrugged. What good would it do? But Sari looked very upset and confused. It's being in that cellar why you and Florida are so afraid of rats and mice? Dallas turned away. He didn't like to dwell on those things. His mind automatically stopped the scene and played a different one. Like now, he was imagining that he was a pioneer, the first person ever to hike this hill. Maybe he discovered something incredible up here, something no one else had ever seen. Sari interrupted his reverie. How'd you get out of the toothless lunatic's place? In the morning, Mr. Creepdrep let us out and told us to follow him outside. We were so glad to be out of that rat hole and breathing real air that we followed him. Then he handed us a couple of shovels and told us to start digging. We didn't want to, but he said we wouldn't get breakfast until we'd made some progress on the well, so we started digging. Dallas, you were digging a well? I pretended I was digging for gold. You never know, right? And Florida pretended she was digging for Mr. Creepdrep's grave. So it didn't seem so bad, the digging. We dug for about 3 hours, and then we saw Mr. Creepdrep walking away from the house like he was going out to the barn. So we watched until he was out of sight, and then we ran like nothing we'd ever seen in our whole lives. We ran and ran and ran and hid in some trees, and then we heard him calling us, and he sounded really mad. So we stayed very still. Dallas, I just can hardly believe this, Sari said. It makes me feel mighty sick to my stomach. It's okay, said Dallas. Don't feel sick. We got away, didn't we? Hey, will you look at that? They'd reached the ridge in the clearing of the trees. Look at all those bumpy lumps of dirt. Looks like giant anthills. Not as pretty as the holler is. Sari dabbed at her forehead. It sure is hot. Are you thirsty? You got the canteen? Canteen? Said Dallas. Oh, goodness, poor Dallas. He's very forgetful. On the banks of the hidden river, Tiller and Florida were finishing their lunch. Are you a little stiff? Tiller asked, rubbing his back. A little, said Florida, and I'm about swole up and itching to death from those skeeter bites. Tiller stretched. I didn't count on my arms being so numb. Are your arms numb? More than numb. They're sore. I feel like I wrestled 100 hogs, said Florida. How are we going to carry on paddling with our arms all sore and pitiful? We'll take it a little bit easier this afternoon. Let's the river carry us along. We'll be lazy paddlers. Florida stood on the riverbank, her feet kicking at stones. It's a stinky smell here, don't you think? She said, with the muddy crud and those ugly weed things. Tiller sniffed the air. Phew! It's not that pretty of a smell, like by the Holler Creek, where those itty bitty blue flowers grow all along the bank. Tiller closed his eyes. Oh, I know which flowers you mean. Tiller, did you ever wish Dallas and Sari were here with us, going down the river? Tiller took a deep breath, looked down the river and up the river, and let out his breath slow and even. About every 2 minutes, I think that, he said. You're not like Dallas, Florida said. Is that good or bad? Neither one. Well, how am I different? Tiller asked. Florida kicked at the dirt. Well, Dallas is always thinking everybody will be okay and stuff. But you complain a lot. Me? Complain? Yeah, you do. Oh, he said. It's just our nature. Florida knelt to examine a beetle scurrying along the bank. I wouldn't ever want to be all by my lonesome, would you? Tiller felt his heart do its fluttering thing again. He couldn't imagine life without Sari. It pained him to imagine it, and yet not half an hour earlier he'd been wondering what it would be like to be floating down the river by himself. That's different, he told himself. That's not forever loneliness. He glanced at Florida and felt another flutter. He hoped Florida would never be alone. Do you hear me? Florida asked. Would you want it to be all by your lonesome? No, said Tiller. I need someone to listen to me complain. Florida tilted a twig toward the beetle, letting it run up the side. I didn't mean it was such a bad thing to be a complaining person, she said. Don't go and get your feelings hurt. As they pushed off down the river again, Tiller said, Florida, aside from that scary toothless lunatic's place, did you and Dallas ever get sent anywhere else? Oh, sure, said Florida, dipping her paddle slowly into water. You want to hear about the hoppers and who said we were thieves, or the cranbeps who thought we were brutes, or the nasty Bergenton boys? Why don't you start with the hoppers, he said. So it sounds like Sari and Tiller are trying to get these two to open up and talk to them about what their life has been like. Because I think they really want to help them and they really care about them. And they're on their little adventures right now. So that's kind of exciting. So hopefully we'll get to hear more about that. Well, I hope you guys are all reading and that you are loving school still and having a good time. And I miss seeing your little faces. If you guys have books to bring back, please put them in a box that are outside the library. There's a box for you to put your books in. If you have not returned them, please do so. All right, see you later.